Pakistan caused a great excitement by claiming that it knocked down 6 Indian fighters, including 3 Rafales, 1 Su-30, a Jaguar, a MiG-29, and an Israeli drone Aran. This great impact allegation was made in response to the Indian attack of May 2025, in which India launched Operation Sibir, an aerial attack on terrorist training fields located in both Pakistan and in the Kashmir region. This confrontation, still wrapped in misinformation and accusations on both sides, became a point in tensions between these two nuclear nations. Operation Sibir, which took place at dawn on May 7th, mobilized about 75 Indian fighters and aimed, according to the Indian authorities, training fields of terrorist groups. The Indian government stated that the missions were accurate, limited, and directed exclusively to military targets, with a specific focus on preventing civil damage. The impact of these attacks on Pakistan and Kashmir, however, was immediate and severe. Pakistan, in turn, claimed that Indian action resulted in significant casualties on the Pakistani side, including the death of 26 civilians, with the attacks impacting areas such as Muridik and Muzaffarabad, regions that are already sensitive due to decades of conflict. However, the biggest shock came with the allegations that India would have lost no less than 6 aircraft during the fight. The Pakistani government said it had knocked down its fighters, including the loss of 3 Rafales, a Su-30, a Jaguar, and a MiG-29. In addition, Pakistan also claimed that an Israeli drone Aran was shot down in the process. These allegations, if confirmed, would be extremely significant, not only for the amount of lost aircraft, but also for the nature of the confrontation. In contrast, the Indian version is much more moderate. Although Indian official sources confirm the fall of 3 aircraft, India did not position itself clearly about the models or causes of these incidents, leaving room for speculation and a war of versions. The statements about what really happened in the Kashmir skies are inaccurate, especially when considering the images and videos that began to circulate on social networks. Many of these contents were not verified, and various profiles and media, both Pakistani and Indians, used old images to reinforce their narratives. According to independent and amateur reports, at least 3 Indian aircraft would have fallen into India territory, with wreckage recovered in places such as Punjab, Akwar, and Pampore. The truth of these allegations, however, remains in doubt, since the evidence is still scarce and not conclusive. While Pakistan has a more dramatic version of events, with the claim of large losses to India, Nova Delhi's response was more cautiously. The India embassy in China accused Pakistani vehicles and the Chinese state media of propagating misinformation, further exacerbating the tension on the information ground. Not only are governments exchanging accusations, but social networks are full of photos and videos, many of them counterfeit or clearly decontextualized, which makes it even harder to separate the truth from propaganda. These developments on the number of overthrowing fighters indicate that Pakistan may have prepared in advance for a possible Indian airstrike. In addition, several sources suggest that the May 7th attack may have been the largest number of air losses to India since the 1971 war, a data that, in itself, already raises the severity of the event. Some analysts speculate that the lack of preparation of Indian pilots, combined with a possible overload of fighters in the territory, may have contributed significantly to these losses. Pakistan, on the other hand, has prepared thoroughly for the scenario. Knowing the growing risk of an Indian airstrike, the Pakistani armed forces concentrated their air defenses in strategic areas, especially the use of long-range missiles such as PL-15, as well as anti-aircraft defense systems such as HQ-9B. These factors allowed Pakistan to more effectively face the approaching Indian fighters, helping to neutralize the air threat in a well-coordinated way. This combination of factors, such as the Pakistani preparation, the use of advanced defense systems, and the variable experience of Indian pilots, created a situation in which losses to India could have been much larger than initially imagined. Pakistan, on the contrary, seemed to be ready and well-positioned to face any air foray, which further increases doubts about the nature of the confrontation and the real amount of losses suffered on both sides. Now, the next steps of both countries will depend on what will be revealed about the details of this event. The tension remains high, with a climate of uncertainty hanging over the skies of Kashmir, where the possibility of a more aggressive climb becomes increasingly real. In the next blocks, we will explore the consequences of this operation and the potential impact on an already volatile scenario between India and Pakistan. After the Indian attack of May 7, 2025, both India and Pakistan have entered a game of misinformation, each trying to shape the narrative about what really happened in Kashmir airspace. As we mentioned in the previous part, Pakistan claimed to have knocked down 6 Indian fighters, including 3 Rafales, which, if confirmed, would be a huge loss to India, which recently acquired the state-of-the-art French fighters. India, in turn, minimized these allegations, stating that there were no more than 3 aircraft filed, 2 fighters and 1 drone, and presented a tone more contained in their public statements. The controversy over the number of fighters and damage caused during the confrontation is a clear reflection of how information can be manipulated during times of crisis. The narrative war is often as devastating as the physical confrontation. Both parts, India and Pakistan, use their respective media and social networks to present evidence and videos. However, the problem arises when these evidence is not verified, creating fertile ground for disinformation spread. Old images of fire aircraft, videos of wreckage dating from past confrontations, and even manipulated images are presented as evidence of the losses of both parties. This misinformation cycle is fed by digital platforms, which are now one of the largest battlefields of modern war. Safety experts and military analysts believe this exchange of accusations and failures to authenticate information can lead to an even greater escalation of conflict, especially since both India and Pakistan have nuclear weapons, which increases the risk of total confrontation. Not only can misinformation affect public perception, but it can also influence the military posture of both countries, generating uncertainty and impulsive reactions. The actual number of losses may never be fully clarified, as both governments continue to maintain a smoke curtain about evidence. While Pakistan has as evidence videos of falling Indian fighters and photographs of wreckage, India defends itself with reports on the missions of its combat aircraft and detailed military documents that, however, remain poorly accessible to the general public. The Indian government, in its defense, said Operation Sibir was a strategic success, even with the losses reported. This position was reaffirmed by the high leadership of India, which stressed the accuracy of the attacks and the ability of the Indian armed forces to perform combat operations in adverse environments. However, the situation became even harder to understand when Pakistan began to disclose that the Indian attack had not only been air, but also involved a significant terrestrial offensive with bombing support. India, in turn, denied any terrestrial action, insisting that the operation had an exclusive focus on the air and intelligence component. The war of versions only increases the complexity of the situation, with each side presenting its own version of history to the international community. The use of unqualified videos and dubious photos further complicates the credibility on both sides. This has generated an environment of distrust, where few believe in what really happened and everyone remains alert to the next movement of the military forces involved. The behind-the-scenes tension intensifies as the war of information reaches its peak. Pakistan, in its attempt to gain international support and legitimize its actions, caught the attention of international human rights organizations for civil attacks during the clashes. It is alleged that, in addition to the direct deaths caused by bombing, there was a growing humanitarian crisis in regions such as Mirpur and Muzaffarabad, cities that were at the front line of the attacks. India, on the other hand, presented evidence of heavy artillery attacks by the Pakistani forces in civil areas of Kashmir, resulting in casualties on the Indian side. Both countries, therefore, are mutually accused of violating war laws and causing significant collateral damage to the civilian population, a situation that always enhances political and military instability in the region. In addition, analysts suggest that the lack of combat experience of many Indian pilots could have contributed to the high number of lost aircraft, a theory that gains strength when considering recent training of the Indian armed forces, which, although technically advanced, do not have the same combat experience in a modern war as the Pakistani forces. Pakistan, by contrast, seems to be more familiar with high-intensity combat scenarios due to its experience in prolonged missions and its aerial defenses concentrated in critical places. Meanwhile, the use of long-range missiles such as PL-15 and HQ-9B anti-aircraft systems were effective for Pakistan, helping to neutralize Indian aerial incursions. Pakistani air defense has evolved in recent years, with constant improvements in radar skills and interception of enemy aircraft. This could have been a key factor for the losses reported by India, which may have underestimated Pakistan defense capabilities. The scenario is further complicated when we observe the role of international powers. With the escalation of violence, concerns about a possible nuclear climbing increase. International policy experts say the reactions of China and the United States, two of the largest players in the subcontinent, will be fundamental to the next steps of both countries. While China has narrowed ties with Pakistan, the United States maintain a strategic relationship with India, which places the great powers in a delicate position, trying to mediate a conflict that threatens the region, further destabilizing the region. Now, more than ever, the risk of a total war between India and Pakistan seems real. Both countries have nuclear arsenals, and any calculation error can lead to a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. The situation in the skies of Kashmir remains tense, with a climate of uncertainty hanging over the next strategic movements. In this scenario, what seemed to be a simple airstrike became a potential global conflict with much greater implications than the air battle itself. What happened after air clashes and the narrative war was a silent race between immediate retaliation and strategic containment. Both India and Pakistan know that the next wrong step can mean not only more destruction, but the opening of a nuclear conflict. However, the official rhetoric of the two governments began to intensify with inflamed discourses in their parliaments. Political leaders on both sides used words such as definitive response, revenge, and unenforceable national defense, inflammating nationalism and placing more wood in the stake of tension. Pakistan, in the face of the offensive of India, tried to display its defensive readiness to the world. Videos released on social networks showed HQ-9B missile batteries positioned in strategic areas, as well as movement of military trains towards Kashmir. The government also claimed that it used PL-15 ARRAR missiles with guidance by active radar, which would have been decisive to overthrow Indian fighters. India, in turn, responded with demonstrations of strength involving their own strategic weapons, such as BrahMos missiles and Agni-2 launchers, capable of reaching targets more than 2,000 kilometers. Although none of these weapons has been used, the simple fact that they were placed in a state of readiness has raised the level of international alertness. In the field, the civil situation deteriorated. The constant bombing and skirmishes left whole villages without access to electricity, water, or medical attention. In Srinagar and Rawalakot hospitals, doctors reported the arrival of injuries on both sides, mostly civilians hit by shrapnel or collapse. The UN tried to mediate a temporary truce for the rescue of injuries and delivery of supplies, but the lack of mutual confidence prevented any effective ceasefire. Meanwhile, military analysts continued to unravel Indian Operation Sibir, baptized in reference to the red powder used in Hindu ceremonies, involved about 75 fighters of different models: Rafales, Su-30 MKI, Jaguars, and MiG-29s operating from Punjab and Ladakh bases. The mission aimed to reach training fields allegedly used by armed groups that, according to New Delhi, would be supported by Islamabad. Indian authorities have classified the attack as a surgical blow against terrorism, while Pakistan saw the action as a blatant violation of his sovereignty. Pakistani sources have reported that their forces managed to track and engage Indian fighters thanks to a combination of Chinese radars and integrated quick response systems. 3 Rafales would have been slaughtered in an air siege maneuver, in which J-10C and JF-17 fighters blocked the Indian escape route, forcing pilots to fly to areas already covered by HQ-9B anti-aircraft systems. The Su-30 would have been knocked down by a short-range missile, while the Jaguar and the MiG-29 were caught in air ambushes while returning to the base. An Israeli drone Aran strategic surveillance would also have been shot down after invading the Pakistani airspace. India, pressured by public opinion and parliamentarians, confirmed that 3 aircraft had been lost, but rejected any additional information, claiming that the rest of the reports were war manufacturing and propaganda. The dispute was also of international credibility. While Pakistan was trying to convince Arab countries and China of its defensive position, India reinforced its alliance with the United States and European countries, arguing that its action was a legitimate response to terrorist threats. Tensions reached a critical point when U.S. satellites detected movements in missile silo in both countries. The red alert was issued at Pentagon and Beijing. The whole world arrested the breath for 48 hours. During this time, ambassadors ran between UN and BRICS emergency meetings, seeking ways to prevent a new attack or simple retaliation, triggering a nuclear conflict. Diplomacy narrowly won. Internal sources revealed that a silent agreement was sewn with the help of Washington and Beijing. Both sides ceased flights in areas near the control line in Kashmir and retreated part of their mobile missile units. However, no formal statement was made. No ceasefire has been signed. The world simply breathed a sigh of relief while the military bases silenced slowly. But silence is misleading. The Kashmir region follows as a barrel of gunpowder, with soldiers on both sides ready to react to the smallest movement. The May 2025 episode left deep scars. In the skies, in the hearts of bereaved families, and in diplomatic relations between two countries that walk on a fine line between national honor and guaranteed mutual destruction. The future remains uncertain. What is known is that in this clash between New Delhi and Islamabad, the next spark may not be contained. And in a world where two rival countries have nuclear weapons and a history of mutual distrust, any provocation can become the trigger of an unprecedented tragedy.